one thing I think about a lot is right around the time I came out, which is like a terrifying thing to do as a like elected official in Indiana, right?
This was after you got back from Afghanistan.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It was after
What
I got
happened? What did you eat out there?
No, honestly, what happened was, when you get deployed, they tell you to write a letter. And I still have it in a drawer somewhere. And it's the letter, it just says just in case on the outside.
Wow.
And it's everything from that you want your loved ones to know, from your internet passwords to like how you feel your life went, right? Everybody should do this, by the way. You shouldn't have to like wait to be sent to war to do this.
Yeah.
And I was a sitting mayor of my hometown because I was a reservist. So I got deployed while I was in office, and I just took a leave, stopped being mayor, started being lieutenant, and went into my other job, basically. So I was a sitting mayor of my hometown. I had a beautiful house. I had good friends. I had like a good life. And that was part of what I wrote about in that letter. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, all right, but I'm a grown-ass man in a position of responsibility. And I don't actually know what it's like to be in love. And if I get back, I'm not going to let that continue. Like whatever the implications, I'd rather deal with that than once again contemplate the idea that I could go to my grave not knowing what it's like to be in love. So then, it was awkward timing because it's actually the middle of a re-election. But I took some time, like I took months to think through, okay, how do I do this? How do I say this? Like, what is that? And then one day I did it. I wrote a little op-ed in the local paper. I said, I don't think this should be anybody's business, but I know it's a thing. Here's something you should know about me. And it was fine. I mean, it wasn't fine. There were,
people upset.
There was some ugliness around it, but like, nothing ever happened that made me regret that I did it. But the story I was starting to tell was that sometime after that, when I started dating Chasten, maybe, I don't know, some months
Did he
after
jump
that.
on that immediately? Was he like, oh, hell yeah? Did he like slide into the DMs? He was like, he's, you know what I mean? Like, was that quick afterwards?
No, I found him. Well, it was Hinge, the dating app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't Grindr.
Grindr's for Republicans.
I know everybody thinks
We do need to talk about why every time the RNC happens, Grindr explodes. I'm just saying. Out him.
Seems like a lot of letters need to be written.
They don't serve.
So anyway, I met him, fall in love, start dating, and this I run into this woman I know, I think in the lobby of the county city building. I'm walking into work. I know she's a little more conservative. And she comes up and she says, I ran into your friend and he's wonderful.
Oh.
And it was one of those moments, right, where like, I think it was very important that the thing to recognize is like, for her, she was signaling something pretty big for her.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know exactly, but I can guess like how she thought about and talked about gay people probably all her life. But she knew me, she met him, he's wonderful. Like,
Yeah.
Right. Versus if I like treated her to a lecture on the difference between a friend and a partner, right?
Yeah.
That would have pushed her right back into the arms of these people who don't want anything good for like me. So what I take from that is this broader process that needs to go on, where we find people, and as passionate as we are and as right as I believe we are about the big things, even though I'm open to the fact that we may not be right about everything, we're not telling people that they are bigoted or racist or whatever, because they don't already start out in the same place that we are. Right? There has to be that process of kind of inviting people to look at things the way we look at things, versus commanding them to. And I think that is something that in the culture of my party has been especially challenging in the last like 10 or 20 years. But that we need to work through, because again, politics is about persuasion. It's about finding people where they are. It's about how they feel about themselves. I think there is a desire for belonging that is not just something liberals care about. I actually think the loss of belonging that happens in a town like where I grew up, when you lose your auto job and the Workforce Development Agency comes along and says, good news, I found a job that you can get qualified for based on your education, and it pays just as much, and you're going to be a nursing assistant.
Yeah.
And like, maybe that's a perfectly good job, obviously, but like, if the last 20 years of your life have been about not just the way you make your money, but the way you see where you fit in the world, is about what you know how to do in a machine shop. And some well-intentioned person with a clipboard is telling you, guess what? Now you get to be a nursing assistant.
Yeah.
Like, that is not finding people where they are. That's not because something has happened to their sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And, we really care about belonging, maybe to a fault, but like, we try to make sure that there's room for everybody at the table in society and in different processes and in our politics. But if we really take that seriously, like if we really live up to that, that means recognizing that some crises around belonging are a big part of why some people, many of whom voted for the other guy this last time, are really prepared to just burn the house down and think that's no worse than any of the other things that could happen.
Mm-hmm. So including them in those groups of people that you are looking out for.
Yeah, and meaning it.
And meaning,
like,
yeah.
You can't
Not
really
doing it
be
in a
persuasive about
patronizing
them
way.
unless you actually mean it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that there's a really beautiful story about giving that woman grace.
Yeah.
And choosing maybe to not correct her and understanding. Now, you had the benefit of having a relationship with that person and understanding maybe how difficult it was for her to even come there.
Mm-hmm.
And you both had this amazing experience where you connected with people as individuals before you knew things about each other that might
Yes.
create some separation, which is kind of a really awesome thing about the human spirit. It's like, once I kind of know who you are as a dude or a chick, and like these other things in your life, all of a sudden I have a little bit more empathy for or understanding, or at least want to understand because I like who you are. But what a great experiment. How do we get to that point? And how do Republicans also do that? Like, this is something I've been... every time I go on like a really conservative podcast, the trans discussion comes up, and then like, what I've tried to explain, at least from my perspective, is like both sides are trying to protect kids. They just think the protection is different, right? And I imagine like the most benevolent part of the left is going, hey, these kids might be suffering in the wrong body, and their parents might not create a space for them at home where they can like be their true selves. And then parents on the right go, hey, I don't want to be in second place for the decisions made about my kid to the school. Like, I don't even know the principal. Why are they like, and I have empathy for that too. Yeah. And how do we get to a point where we're not constantly trying to dunk on one another?
Right.
And we're actually trying to, like you said, meet people where they are. Yeah. Like, well, how do we do that as a country in general?
Like the key word there is the empathy, right? The like understanding. So I think you put it really well, like having empathy for parents or students who are in that position, which is terrifying, of belonging to one of the most tiny and kind of harassed minorities that there is in the country, but also empathy for people who sincerely want to make sure that sports are safe and fair, and want to make sure that they have the most important say in what's happening in deciding what's best for their children. Like that, these are like very human things that, if you strip away all the layers of the politics of it, come from a place of very understandable concern and like humanity, right?
Yeah. There is humanity in both positions. And I think that's lost in the dialogue sometimes.
Yes, which brings us in some ways back to the algorithms. So I think a big part of the answer to your question is offline. There have to be spaces that are offline, or at least that are not like shaped by algorithms, where these conversations happen. Because to your point, if all I know about you is that you're, some random account on Twitter shitposting like something I really care about, then I'm going to assume you're an asshole. But if I know you, and then we discover like we view these things in different ways, we're away from the keyboards, right? Yeah. Then it's a completely different conversation. And I really worry, and sometimes this is coded as like a conservative worry, but I think liberals should be just as worried about it, about things like neighborhoods and faith communities and other sources of belonging and meaning that overlap the different political commitments that we have. Because it's in those spaces. I mean, again, I think back to the military. Like, if I was getting in a vehicle to go outside the wire, like the other people getting in the vehicle with me definitely did not care if I was a Republican or a Democrat, or like what country my dad immigrated from, or if I was going home to a girlfriend. I'm really excited for the next hour. We're going to talk about multivitamins.
I cannot wait.
Like all they wanted to know, obviously, was that they could trust me to do my job. Same thing, vice versa, because we were trusting each other with our lives
100%.
every time we went outside the wire.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I was not into like a combat or maneuver. My job was just to like drive them safely to where they needed to go. But that could be scary.
That does have risk.
Not that everybody should be in the military, but like everybody should be in environments where people as people first. We start this way. We grow up, families are like this.
Sports, a lot of times.
Sport,
if you're part of team sports,
absolutely.
it's like this. I agree with you 1,000,000%.
You know how somebody handles themselves in a tough situation, and then you find out like how each of you comes at something, right? That's just such a more honest and human and ultimately respectful and decent process of encounter.
It's amazing how understanding we can be when we have that type of relationship built first.
Yeah.
Like when you came out, did you speak to any of your military brethren, and how did they feel about it?
Yeah, and some of them, like, I got to tell you, like when I got to my unit, and by then, like, I wasn't out, but I like knew that I was gay, obviously.
Yeah.
And like the gay jokes are flying around, right?
Yeah.
Like all the way down to like, oh man, that like memo that just came down from the command. Is that the gayest thing you've ever seen? Like, Sergeant, what's the gayest thing you've ever seen? This is even gayer than that, right? Like
that.
Animals.
I know, to me it sounded kind of retro, but that was definitely how people were talking. 2014 when I was out there.
Children, lower intelligence.
But like, those seemed like, they were all like fine. Like they either made it clear that they didn't care.
Yeah.
Or they found some excuse like unrelated to anything to like check on how I was doing, right?
But that's endearing too, because you know that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then a couple people it turned out, including somebody who I like turned to more than once to volunteer for outside the wire drives that he didn't have to do with me, but I needed somebody else who was qualified on a long gun. Turned out he was in the same boat. I never knew it.
So you vampired him.
It's not contagious. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe you got me.
I don't know what that He did have the long gun. Hey! No. Okay, so wow. So he was,
but to feel like we knew each other, we trusted each other, we understood each other. Something we like went and suddenly agreed about politics. Like some of the people I served with were like super conservative and still are, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, we kind of, that wasn't like central because we knew each other, like at a human level.
And you built that trust up with them.
Yeah, because we did something hard together, right?
Yeah.
That's so interesting because I feel like you're in a unique position to see both sides. You know what I mean? Like, because I feel like there's a perception from many people on the left, like, oh, these conservatives are racist and homophobes and da-da-da. Where I think many of them, at least like, my family and all my friends in Florida that identify as conservative, they don't really care about, their friend being gay, or like living in communities with like, multi-ethnic backgrounds. Yeah. It's not pressing for them. And sometimes they will say things that are problematic, like they'll be like, yeah, I don't care if my friends are gay, but like, don't make my kids gay, which obviously is a problematic idea.
Yeah.
But the core of what they're saying, I think the feeling that comes through, you're able to sort of, understand in a way that I think a lot of people on the left don't. Because they hear that and they go, no, well, you shouldn't say that. But you can kind of be in a position to say, well, no, I understand what he's trying to say. He's just not saying it properly.
It's almost like you treat everybody like a grandparent at first.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how like your granddad could say something really fucked up, but like he comes from a good place.
Yeah, and you love him.
And you love it. And then eventually, after meeting your friend who's Asian, and you convince him that he's not Vietnamese, and you're like, and then he's like, oh, I love this guy.
Yeah, he still says Oriental.
Exactly.
You're like, all right.
It's not the exact words, but there's love there and empathy. Yeah. Well, okay. So can I just ask you, are you familiar with white boy fun?
No.
This term? Okay. So this is when straight guys pretend to be gay with each other.
Straight white guys.
Straight white guys. Black guys are just getting on it, and they're doing really good. They're like really coming around. Al's
Usually happens.
basketball. You get a little bit late, and then you take it to the next level, and they're going to completely dominate it. But okay, so did you never see any of that in the military where guys would like do little gay jokes with each other and that kind of stuff? Like,
vaguely. I mean, that's like half of middle school humor, like as a general rule, right?
Also, just like in your 40s, whatever. Yeah. And, but okay. So like during this time, and it's not like to me, it's not like shrouded in like any like hatred for gays. It's more about just like, how can I do something that potentially makes my friend or makes him feel uncomfortable in this moment, right? are you ever in those scenarios? And at this time, you know you're gay, but you're not out. And then they're doing this game with you. We're like, oh, I'm going to make Pete feel so uncomfortable. And you're like, joke's on you. You know? This is so weird, guys.
Not really, no. But I know like that. Yeah, that happens to a lot of people. Who are like in this situation where like there's this just like one of the few minorities that like it's not obvious to everybody whether you're part of that minority, right?
Yeah.
Unless you decide to tell people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely know that like that kind of thing can happen, but I can't off the top of my head think of an encounter like that.
Of those things. Yeah. Okay. All right. You finally come out.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm glad we waited to the end of the episode to talk about this because I have so many questions about it, given your situations in life, but I didn't want to feel reductive, like this was your whole identity. I actually kind of wanted to get to know you before I asked you about two things, which is ironic we're having this conversation right now. But like, okay, so you come out, like, scariest thing, you've been at war. You know what I mean? Like, is it more terrifying than doing a drive where an IUD could go off? And like, what is the fear level?
It had my blood pumping just as much, for sure. Even when it's not totally rational. Like telling my parents was not easy. And I had it way easier than most people. My parents were like very loving and very kind of socially liberal. Like it was not actually a problem.
Did they know or were they surprised?
They didn't. If they knew, they didn't say anything. I think they noticed at a certain point that I wasn't bringing girlfriends around. And like,
Did you? Are you like gold star or platinum? Like what? Do you know about these?
Oh right, no, yeah. Cheston tried to explain this to me once.
I feel like you're still learning how to be gay.
I'm not like the best representative of my people. No, I'm not. No, I'm
gold.
not. Like,
okay, so you've
Wait, what's platinum?
So platinum is you come out C-section, so you never even touch a vagina.
No, I'm neither gold nor platinum.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so in that process,
that's really a thing. Like I go all the way back to.
I mean, these are what my gays tell me. My gays tell me these things, so I gotta know. So okay, so in this process, like you're dating girls, you're like, I don't really know. At what point are you like, okay, I'm definitely gay, and is there a part of you where like I have these aspirations to do these other things in my life, and this isn't my entire identity? Are you going in that moment? Do I stuff this down? Have you accepted it, or have you not accepted it?
You're running from mayor in the closet.
Yeah, my entire 20s were like this. Like, because by then, like, I really, really wanted to not be gay, right? Because I mean, separate and apart from wanting to have a life in public service, like I grew up in Indiana. Like, I don't think most gay kids growing up in Indiana in the 90s, like, if you really gave them a choice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so part of that was like, okay, like I dated this like string of amazing women, and like over time, like it was just very clear, as amazing as they were, that like the things that are supposed to happen in terms of the way you feel about and fall in love with somebody, like that's, you know, I'm not saying it's just process of elimination. Like there are other ways you know who you're attracted to, but like you can pack that away. Like
God, once you came out, you must have made them feel so good. And, right? Because they got over that rejection or whatever.
I mean, yeah, they all did. Yeah, well, I mean,
you're the only guy who was like, it was me, and told the truth.
But I knew, actually, before I became, like years before the Afghanistan deployment coming out and all that, my first election, I won the primary. And the way things were shaping up, I knew that I would probably win the general election. I was probably going to be mayor. And that was like a huge leap in responsibility. Obviously, I had been like a consultant, and you know, I was a military.
You're young too. You're like 29
when I got elected. 29, yeah, 28, 29.
Oh, sorry.
So I knew that like I should not be in a position of that kind of responsibility unless I've like resolved this in some way. And if I'm not ready to come out to the world, I got to come out to somebody, because that's the best way I can come out to myself, right? If I've like just told even one person, then it's kind of real, and I'm no longer kind of like in that fog mentally. And so I like took a deep breath, and just a good buddy of mine from over the years, one of my best friends over beers, and I'm just like, look, I gotta tell you something. And one of the first things he said, he kind of patted me on the shoulder and said, you know, you
do it. I'm not into you like this.
And he's straight. he said, like, you didn't exactly make it easy on yourself. And what he meant was that
that's so kind.
my career, to the extent I had a career, there were two parts to it, right? There was the majority of it, which was public office in Indiana.
Yeah.
And there was the other part, which was service in the military as a reservist. And by the way, that was still don't ask, don't tell back then too, right? So I could literally be fired, which is another reason I didn't come out too quickly. Anyway, it was that process of like just coming to terms with that and just knowing, even if I wasn't ready to tell everybody or like deal with everything that went with it. And in my case, that meant I wasn't going to start dating either, because I didn't want to be like hiding a boyfriend, or like that just seemed really unhealthy. And, I was so invested in my work that for a while I wasn't missing. I mean, I don't want to say I wasn't missing much. I didn't feel that I was missing a lot. Yeah. Because I used to joke that like the city was a jealous bride, and then it was we talked about my deployment experience that put me over the edge.
When did you first start to think, oh, okay, I might be gay? And then what was the gap between that and being like, I can't hide this, I can't compartmentalize this, this is what it is? And what are you going through mentally and emotionally in that time?
I mean, there's years and years and years of that, right? Like, I mean, at some level when you're a teenager, like there's some pretty strong data points, right?
Yeah.
But the things you can tell yourself, if you really want something to not be true, the things you can tell yourself to try to make it not be true are pretty powerful, right? I mean, you can tell yourself, like everybody, at like 14 or 15, every dude seems like they want to nail anything that moves, right? So like you can convince yourself like, oh, it's just like everybody's all over the place, and I'm just like, and then like you start noticing like more of a pattern, especially when you're dating women, and it's like not. And there's a lot of extrapolating, right? You're like watching like a straight love story, and you're like trying to like relate to it, but like it just doesn't quite land, right?
That's funny.
And yeah, I think by the time I was like, mid to late 20s, I was like, okay, I can't. First of all, I can't like waste women's time or mine. Messing around, like hoping that somehow I'm like
those are valuable years
less
for them.
gay, right? Like, because like that, there's a point where like that's not a fair thing to do to somebody.
100%.
And also like wasting my time, and
that's crazy. You've dated more women than me.
Yes.
These guys have only been with one woman each. Yeah. So you're straighter kind of in a lot of ways.